If one could have flown over Milan at the end of the 4th century, he could have admired the city's magnificent buildings. Milan's Bishop Ambrose had died a few years before, and Honorius had succeeded Theodosius as head of the Western Roman Empire. In addition to the amphitheatre and the circus, he could have seen the theatre, built at the end of the 1st century AD.
Siamo qui in via San Vittore Teatro per vedere quello che resta del teatro romano, che si trovava sotto la Borsa.
The ancient building had a semicircular ground plan, like all Roman theatres. It lay on a platform made of pebbles, gravel and mortar, built after the soil had been reinforced with hundreds of wooden poles more than 1 meter long. Under the Milan Stock Exchange, the ruins of the theatre with the remains of its foundations can still be seen today. They came to light between 1929 and 1930 on the occasion of the construction of the Stock Exchange. The theatre had probably a height of about 20 meters and a cavea with a diameter of 95. Seen from the outside, the building appeared probably arranged on 3 levels and marked by columns in white marble of Doric, Ionic and Corinthian order respectively, and adorned by numerous statues. The first 2 floors were porticoed, while the third one culminated in an attic illuminated by small openings. The stage had a monumental scene and reproduced the façade of a palace, richly adorned with statues, with 3 doors leading to a backstage, probably equipped with a portico. The semicircular orchestra was reserved to prominent people, while the cavea, or the area of the terraces, was divided into 3 sectors, accessible by dedicated entrances, with a system of tunnels and stairways that allowed to approximately 8,000 spectators an easy access and a quick outflow. The cavea could be covered with awnings inlaid in velaria to protect the spectators from the sun on warm days. The Roman theatre survived at least until the destruction of Milan by Frederick Barbarossa in 1162. In the year 1045, an agreement between the nobles and the people, led by Lanzone della Corte, was signed at the theatre. The area remained associated to the names of 2 churches, San Vittore al Teatro and San Pietro and Lino, a corruption of the original San Pietro ad Lintea, as it was built next to the warehouse where the theatre's linen awnings were kept. The church of San Vittore al Teatro was built, perhaps by Bishop Galdino, near to the ruins of the theatre, attested by various sources as a chapel. Towards the end of the 14th century, the church had a rectangular ground plan. It had 3 naves, a raised presbytery, a semicircular apse, and 2 chapels on the right side. In 1622, the church, also nicknamed the Church of the Carpenters because of the many carpenters living in the surroundings, was rebuilt in accordance with the plan of architect Francesco Maria Ricchini, that is, with a single nave a presbytery, and 3 chapels on the left side. The large chapel on the right side survived demolition and was entirely decorated with frescoes of the school of Bernardino Luini. The main feature of Luini's pictorial work is its mainly ornamental character, in which the figures of the composition blend nicely with purely ornamental elements in a delicate harmony of colors enlivened by gilt, which the painter loved to utilize in his works, together with images of cupids, his favorite subject. In 1910, the chapel will be demolished together with the whole church in order to make room for a square in front of the new Stock Exchange building. A few frescoes were detached and transported to the new church of Santa Maria Segreta in the Tommaseo Square. The little angels were used for the decoration of the baptistry, and other frescoes were placed inside the rectory. In 1885, the engineer Carlo Sacchi placed a sundial on the outside wall. It was the largest in the entire city. In 1801, the Stock Exchange had to be built in Foro Bonaparte, next to a new Palazzo del Governo, on the ruins of the Sforza castle. However, that building, designed in Palladian style by architect Antolini, in emulation of ancient Roman terms, was never constructed. Then, in 1807, someone came to the idea of using the deconsecrated church of Santa Maria del Giardino together with its adjacent convent for the new Stock Exchange. They should have provided the space for the whole of Stock Exchange trades. However, also that project was abandoned, and the Stock Exchange, founded in 1808, was housed in Piazza dei Mercanti, in the Palazzo della Ragione and in the Palazzo dei Giureconsulti, the portico of which was closed in accordance to a design by architect Terzaghi. In 1857, the same architect was entrusted with the task of closing the portico of the Palazzo della Ragione to create a new hall for the exchange trades. In 1898, with the realization of Piazza Cordusio, the Stock Exchange was transferred to the ground floor of a new building, designed by architect Luigi Broggi and inaugurated in 1901. Later on, however, the increase in stock market activities after the end of World War I made the building in Piazza Cordusio become insufficient. Therefore, the creation of a new stock exchange was decided in the area comprised between the streets Meravigli, delle Orsole, and San Vittore al Teatro, not far from Piazza Cordusio, a portion of the city already affected by large projects. The project of architect Paolo Mezzanotte integrated the new building with the existing Palazzo Turati in Via Meravigli, while other pre-existing buildings were demolished. The two courtyards of Palazzo Turati were meant to host the market of silk and cocoons and the market of the grains. These spaces and the new hall for the forward market should have been accessed from the new square of the grains at the end of Via delle Orsole and of Via Meravigli. The project was centered on the new open outcry hall, which resembled a public square with walls that repeated the design of the façade. This large hall was porticoed along the four sides. On the walls, arched windows were separated by large low-relief pillars. The hall was covered by an iron and glass velarium. The monumental external façade, in neoclassical style, is on three orders, marked by giant semi-columns and crowned by a tympanum with a large semicircular opening. In correspondence of the semi-columns, groups of statues, sculpted by Lodi and Cibao, are placed on the protruding cornice. The façade was built entirely in blocks of travertine, while exposed bricks and travertine were used for the building's sides. The hall was preceded by an atrium with a circular staircase embellished by a fountain. The public will reach the main hall by entering from the new Piazza degli Affari, while the stockbrokers would enter from Via Meravigli through the Galleria Buffoli. The works began in August 1929, and the Stock Exchange was inaugurated at the end of March 1932. The Square of the Grains was never built, and also Piazza Affari was reduced in size in order to create a new office building on its area. Restructured after the damages of World War II, which affected particularly Palazzo Turati, over the last few years, Palazzo Mezzanotte was radically transformed. Following technology developments, by which all trades are now executed by electronic means, the open outcry hall has become a space for conferences. These monumental buildings seem now almost devoid of life and make you think longingly to the vanished city, the Milan of small medieval streets with small shops and churches in every small square. The city narrated by the writer Emilio De Marchi, who lived right next to San Vittore. In an imaginary letter to the great Milanese poet Carlo Porta, he wrote in Milan's dialect.
Descrivi rabiós, Carlin, del més ancien depòs al campanin de Sant Vitor di Legnamè. Qui de dre l'etri més que fantonina di ca de Milan veig. E piquen, sbaten jo camin, sorè, finester, tore tec, grondai, fasen un catanai in mes a un polvereri che il par propi sul seri la fin del mond. Due il va il me Carlin, che il nostre Milanin, di nostre temp, in scibel e quiet, coi contrad stret in bisera, dente fera, sul gust d'una raniera,